Welcome, adventurers. Is your greatest strength also your greatest weakness? Well, probably not, because that doesn't actually make any sense. But maybe your greatest strength is actually your enemy's greatest weakness. That's more like it, and that, my friends, is the Thaumaturge. Welcome to Rebel Then King. Today we're talking about the Thaumaturge, one of the newest classes, and dare I say, my new favorite. A Thaumaturge is a charisma-based martial character. They have training in simple as well as martial weapons, and light and medium armor proficiency with 8 hit points per level. They're trained into a number of skills equal to 3 plus their intelligence modifier, and they have 9 subclasses called implements. And actually, as you level up, you do get to add more implements to a total of 3, so there are a lot of unique combinations of Thaumaturge as you build out. I think that's really cool, and I also like that they are charisma-based martials, because we haven't really seen any one of those yet. And you know what? Despite that fact, they still hit really, really hard. All right, so let's talk about implements, which are your subclass, basically. They do a couple of things for you. First, they will allow you to add damage to strikes, and second, they will grant you a special action or reaction or bonus to some skill checks. We're going to talk about damage first, because there is a lot of it. All right, implements add so much damage that we have to break this into multiple sections, starting with the implement's empowerment. This is really simple. You hold your implement in one hand, and with the other hand, you strike something. When you do that, you get to add 2 points of damage per weapon damage die. That's it. There are no checks, and there are no actions to do this. So compared to our barbarian, who does have to take an action to go into a state of rage, or a ranger who has to hunt prey, or the inventor who has to actually succeed at a check to go into overdrive, the implement's empowerment is just easy static damage. And yes, this does limit you to a one-handed weapon, but keep in mind you do have access to martial weapons, so you should be able to pick up a D8 weapon. That means if you build out your Thaumaturge with a +3 strength, which I do recommend doing, you will be able to apply a D8 +3 +2 damage for an average of 9.5 points of damage per strike, and that's already pretty good. But you can also take an action called Exploit Vulnerability to open up or find a weakness in your target and apply even more damage using either the Mortal Weakness or Personal Antithesis. Let's take a look at how all of that works as well. Okay, first, how does Exploit Vulnerability work? Well, you make a Recall Knowledge check against a target. When doing so, you don't use the typical skills associated with Recall Knowledge. You actually use a special skill that all Thaumaturge have called Esoteric Lore. And basically, this skill check allows you to make a Recall Knowledge check against haunts, curses, monsters, using your charisma as the ability modifier. That means you will always be using your stacked charisma score for these Recall Knowledge checks. That means you have a pretty good chance at succeeding at almost all of them. And when you make this check, you of course have the 4 results. The best result, the critical success, you learn all the weaknesses of that monster. You can then apply either the Personal Antithesis or the Mortal Weakness. With just a regular success, you learn their highest weakness, and again, you can use the Mortal Weakness or Personal Antithesis. Failure, you don't really learn anything, but you can still apply the Personal Antithesis, so that's really nice that even on failure, it's still good. And then I do like the critical failure effect. You learn nothing, you can do nothing, and you're flat-footed. I think this is so flavorful. You are so busy rummaging through notes or whatever it is that you're doing that you just kind of forget about combat and you're flat-footed. I like that there is a fun failure effect associated with this. All right, so we mentioned those two key words, the mortal weakness and personal antithesis. Let's look at those now, starting with mortal weakness. Basically, you find out the highest weakness that a creature has. Maybe it has a weakness 5 to damage.
Did I just say weakness to damage? What I meant to say is weakness to fire damage.
And you trigger that weakness with your strikes. Now, the damage type that you're dealing doesn't actually change, but you still activate the weakness, if that makes sense. So, for example, in that example, if something has a weakness 5 to fire, you still will be doing your D8 weapon, plus 3 strength, plus 2 from your implement's empowerment, plus 5 from mortal weakness. That is huge, huge damage. But if you don't find out about the mortal weakness, or the creature doesn't really have a big weakness, you can still apply your personal antithesis. This is you making up something about the creature, saying, I'm pointing out a flaw you didn't even know that you have, and then you do damage based on that. That's really fun, and it's powerful. You add an extra 2 plus half your level in damage. So at level 1, you're adding 2. So to go back to that math, you would be doing your D8 weapon, plus 3 strength, plus 2 from implement's empowerment, and another plus 2 from personal antithesis. Still pretty good. And what I really like about the Thaumaturge and all of these bonuses to damage that you get from your implement is it is static damage. And the way that averages work on dice rolls, static damage is better than extra dice damage. For example, if we take a look at 2 strikes that have the same ceiling, the same potential, a Thaumaturge with that D8 weapon, implements empowerment, and personal antithesis, and then someone wielding a D12 weapon, both with a plus 3 strength. Well, the ceiling is 15 for both of those, but that D8 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2, that has an average of 11.5 points of damage, and that D12 plus 3 has an average of only 9.5. So on average, that static damage is going to be really good. Also, if you are fighting something with resistance, then extra bonus static damage becomes doubly important. For example, let's say something has a resistance 5 to slashing and you have a sword in hand. Well, you might have a really good attack roll, you hit, you don't crit, but then your damage roll is just a 1. If you have only a plus 3 or even a plus 4 strength, that means you do no damage with that strike. Now compare that to having a higher static damage. Well, you'll be able to bypass that resistance even if your dice roll on the damage roll is very low. And for those reasons, I think it might be the Thaumaturge and not the Barbarian who can do the most DPS on average. What do you think, Kat? Cat scratching in the background. Don't know if you could hear that. So these implements add a lot of power, a lot of damage to your strikes. But the cool thing is, remember, they have other capabilities too. Let's take a look at some of those examples of the extra reactions, actions, or bonuses that implements provide. The amulet gives you a champion-like reaction, allowing you to mitigate damage to yourself or an ally. The chalice is a healing tool. You can either gain temp HP from it or provide some actual healing. The mirror is awesome. You get to be literally in 2 places at once. You reflect with yourself. You can literally flank with yourself with that one. The tome gives you a +1 benefit to recall knowledge checks, and the weapon gives you basically attack of opportunity. Overall, it seems like a lot of core classes were sort of reimagined in a way of, what if this was a Thaumaturge? A lot of the implement's capabilities sort of have a flavor of those core classes. The weapon is the fighter. The chalice, is maybe the cleric. And like I said, that amulet is clearly based on the champion. This means I think you could actually have a party that is nothing but Thaumaturges and do really, really well. So if you haven't noticed in my other videos, I really do like a bit of Gish. A little bit of magic, a little bit of martial, mix it together, make a character. And the implements are pretty gishy. But it doesn't end there. I think that the Thaumaturge has the coolest, gishiest feats in the system. For example, there is Scroll Thaumaturgy. You are a martial character, but guess what? You get to use scrolls. That is amazing. There's also the Talisman Esoterica. You're a martial character, but you get to build talismans. You can also gain a familiar, learn some more lore. It's just such a cool collection of feats. I absolutely love that. You're already a super powerful martial character, and then your feats are these like sort of dabbling in magic supplements to your character. All right, and now we're on to the nitpick section where I talk about multiple attribute dependency because of course I do. And right, charisma is your key ability score. That means you are a martial character who won't be able to get that full +4 in your strength. That will affect your attack accuracy and will affect your damage a little bit. But you know what? I'm actually quite okay with this. Those implements add so much static damage that having just 3 points of damage from your strength rather than 4 isn't that big of a deal. And the lessened accuracy, yeah, that can be a bit of a problem, but again, you're hitting so hard. I think if you were hitting super often and super accurately too, it would just be overpowered at that point, and honestly, there would be no reason to play as any other type of character. Well, there we have it. I love this class. I think it has such a great collection of feats, a great flavor, really good combat mechanics, and it all comes together so well. Paizo absolutely nailed it. I'm going to have to give this one a perfect score of 10 out of 10 exposed exhaust ports on giant space stations. That's a pretty big mortal weakness. But what do you all think? Maybe I'm overselling this class. Maybe some of the mechanics associated with exploit vulnerability are a little clunkier than I am making them out to be. If you've had some first-hand experience with the Thaumaturge, let me know about it in the comments. Until then, remember that knowing is half the battle, and the other half is stabbing. And if you don't know, you can just make it up. Seriously, it is such a good class.